Where shall I begin? Well, you might say, try starting at the beginning. Now that's easy for you to say. It's finding the beginning that's the hard part. And I should know, because I've been trying to find the beginning to this introduction for some time now, and I just can't seem to find it. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong place, I don't know. But let's assume, for the sake of this introduction, that there is or was such a thing as a beginning. And that's assuming a lot. If you consider that everyone, probably everybody on this planet, at one time or another, usually like when you're around 12 or 13 years old, you ask your parents, Mommy and Daddy, if there really was a beginning of everything, then what was happening before the beginning? And the parents, being good human beings and having forgotten such burning, important questions, usually reply by invoking the interposition of some deity or another who has decreed that, in capital letters, there are some things which mankind was not meant to know. Which, if you think about it, is as good an answer as any. So, back to the beginning. Now that's another interesting thing to ponder. Should it be back to the beginning, or should it be forward to the beginning? Anyway, this is an introduction. An introduction, it seems to me, should be warm and friendly, inviting, humorous, rather like birth, but with less screaming. An introduction should carry the listener or the viewer into the dramatic flow. So you could consider that this introduction is to carry you into this dramatic flow. But now we're not actually going to carry you anywhere. But I'd like you to consider this parallel. This moment in time, this so-called introduction, is like that space, that suspension between breathing in and breathing out, when all of the blood in the circulatory system is poised for that magical moment of transformation. So between our world up here and your world out there, between your inhalation and our exhalation, there is a kind of circulatory flow. It's like a great breathing apparatus, like ductwork. Introduction. And what is the purpose of this great breathing apparatus? Well, could it be similar to the purpose of your own? And that is that there is among and between us an unseen but very physical and very real type of blood, a circulatory flow, continually going on. Continually the blood between and among us is being changed by this great breathing apparatus. But anyway, back to the introduction. Now, in order, it seems to me, in order to properly introduce anything, you should introduce everything from the beginning. You should go back to the beginning of everything. But we really don't have that much time. And frankly, I can't talk that fast. So instead of introducing everything, we're going to introduce a small part of everything. A very small but very integral part of Evoteck. And this part is so integral because it was there at the very beginning. This part of Evoteck, this part of everything, is in a molecule, in a molecule of water. It's a hydrogen atom in this jelly donut. We call this hydrogen atom tiny. Now, tiny, according to his own report of events, has been around since the beginning of everything. Yes, tiny was there at the beginning of everything. He likes to say he took some shrapnel at the Big Bang. You see, Tiny and his pals were just hanging around, no doubt some part of some super compressed cosmic doodad, when all of a sudden it happened. The Big Bang. Tiny doesn't remember much of that time, but he does know that after the hitherto named event, he floated aimlessly in space. For a while he was part of a methane cloud. But the main thing that he remembers is that one day he became part of a comet's tail. Now this comet was a great comet, like a mad, insane, whirling, zigzagging pinball careening through space. And in its mad, wild careenings, one day this comet passed through our solar system. And the very, very tip, the very tail of the comet, in which our friend Tiny here was residing, brushed through the atmosphere of the planet Earth. And some of the cosmic dust, water vapor, frozen water, in the comet's tail settled to Earth. Now, from that point on, as Tiny tells it, he held a bewildering array of jobs here on our beautiful little planet. Among them, let's see, it's rather difficult to read. He has very small handwriting. Among his jobs have been part of a plant, a dinosaur, some gas, a plant again, some slime, seaweed, some mud by a river, part of a fish, in an oyster shell, in a wall in Carthage, dust born in the ocean air, a fish's tailbone, part of a plant again, part of Robinson Crusoe's raft, some dirt stuck to George Bernard Shaw's shoe, and on and on and on. You know, Tiny is very quick to point out that he's very proud of the fact that, at least so he claims, he was part of the ink in the first draft of the original Magna Carta. But, to be perfectly honest, although Tiny might not admit it, he was also part of some coffee that was consumed by a middle-level television executive who later that day, after consuming this coffee, in an insane caffeine-induced lunacy, set in motion a series of events which was to later culminate in the production of the Gomer Pyle U.S. Marine Corps television program. But anyway, to make a long story short, Tiny eventually, after becoming again water vapor and floating around the earth, found himself in a tree, in a leaf in a tree. And one day, Tiny's leaf, as they all must do, turned color and fell to earth, where it became part of an organic garden. And this organic garden produced food which later became fertilizer, which later was sold to a sugar cane producer, which produced the sugar which is in this jelly donut. Now I'm sure you're wondering, what does that have to do with anything? Well, like I said before, our friend Tiny here was present at the beginning. Pretty good. So now, Tiny, this little part of the beginning of everything, is now part of me. And my words, produced by this exhalation of breath and the rasping of my vocal cords, my words produce, as they strike the air, and the air vibrates your inner ear, it produces in you a change of some kind, a molecular, biochemical change, so that now we're all connected. We're all connected to this tiny part of the beginning. But actually, that's not the point of this introduction either. The real point is that when I mentioned before that maybe in looking for the beginning, we were looking in the wrong place, maybe it's that beginning, the so-called Big Bang, of which tiny was such an important part. Maybe somewhere it's still happening. On the edge of things, just beyond where we are now, there is still being created somewhere a new moment. But in order to experience that beginning, we have to be just beyond this moment here, just beyond the next word, just beyond the next thought, just beyond the next breath.